So in a previous class, we had discussed about the scattering that we can see in optical fibers. Can someone tell me the importance of optical fibers? How important are these optical fibers? Are they important or not?
So for high-speed internet connections.
Correct. So which means they are really playing an important role these days, right? Because these days internet has become a part and parcel of our lives, right? Okay. So having a reliable connection and having the best possible communication is possible only through optical fibers. So you can see that we have learned about Rayleigh scattering and microbands, right? So today we'll be learning about the types of optical fiber modes, okay, which is stepped index, graded index. Okay, so just have a look at this diagram. So you can see here that we have core, jacket, and the cladding, right? So core is the central part, okay, and the cladding is the one which comes above the core part, and the outer layer, okay, which covers the fiber thing, the black fiber thing, which covers these days, it's coming in different colors. You can see them in orange, purple, okay, blue. So there are a lot of colors that are given to these optical fibers. Okay. Okay. So this is nothing but the refractive indexes. Okay, N core, N clad, which means for core and for cladding. So when we talk about this optical fibers, right, we need to see that maximum light has been transmitted from one point to another. So which means when I say one point to another, which means it is from source to destination, right? So we need to make sure that this communication, okay, the signal that passes through, okay, shouldn't be attenuated, okay, shouldn't be attenuated, right? So we will just see one by one, okay, as to how this happens. So when I say step index, okay, so it looks like a step. Okay, so the indexing, it looks like a step. So it is 0, and then it climbs up to the higher value, maintains at a constant level, and then when it comes to the interface, okay, between core and cladding, okay, immediately it comes down, and then it is faded. So which means inside the core, okay, there should be maximum transmission, there should be minimum loss. Now if we try to check the waveforms, okay, with respect to these graded index, okay, you can see that there's a slight, almost like a semi sinusoidal wave, right, like a sine wave. We also have something called step index profile fiber, which means what you are seeing here is just for one single wave. So we will not be just sending one wave here, we'll be sending multiple light beams. So if we try to combine them all, okay, so you can see that the light, let us consider this, okay, just a moment. Yeah, so it is going to come here, hit, and then come down, hit the surface, go up, come down, and then here. So which means the reflection and the refractive indexes should be really good, so that this signal, whenever it hits the boundaries, okay, should not be lost. It should be retained. Similarly, here when you see, okay, the waveform pattern inside a graded uh, index type of waveform, okay, comes like this, it's almost like a sine wave. Fine. So these are the types. Now, how do they manufacture this? Based on the type of materials, okay, the combinations. You can actually change the level of this refractive indexes. It is just like, if the surface is too smooth, if the surface is a little rough, okay, so we need to make sure that whatever transmissions that we are doing, okay, should be lossless. Okay, fine. So the next one that we will look into is quadrature amplitude modulation. Have you come across this term, quadrature amplitude modulation? Have you heard of this term, or probably phase modulation? Yes, no, no, not yet. Okay. So I think now in your communications, you do have communication subject right now? Not yet. I think probably you might get it in your third year of study, where you'll be studying digital communications, analog communications. Okay, so over there, okay, you'll be looking into these concepts. But anyhow, beforehand, I will give you the gist of how this technology, or what are the waveforms associated, so that once you get into your core subjects, okay, so then you core communication subjects, so then you'll be able to analyze and you'll be able to better understand the concepts, right? Okay. So the first one, we will be looking into QAM. So we'll be looking into the waveforms and what they are actually into. So quadrature, as the name suggests, okay, quadrature means 4. Amplitude modulation, something which is dependent on the amplitude. Now, whatever voice signals now, that we have is all analog, right? And we have something called analog to digital converter, okay? It's called ADC, analog to digital converter. So whatever analog signals, okay, these are sensed and these are given values, okay? So in our digital signals, we have 2 values. What are they? What are the values associated in digital signals? Yes. What values do we have in digital
0
signals?
and 1, sir.
Sorry, come again.
0 and 1.
Correct. So these are the 2 binary values that we consider, right? Low suggesting 0, high suggesting 1. So high can be even 5 volts, or probably 12 volts, or 14 volts, right? And low can be 0, as usual, right? So here this quadrature amplitude modulation, okay, whatever signals, okay, that we have to represent. Suppose if a signal is high, then the waveform goes high, and if the levels are low, okay, then you can see that the signal is going towards the negative side. Okay, so there are about 4 levels in which this quadrature amplitude modulation works. So quadrature amplitude modulation varies both in amplitude and phase. Okay, so you can see that the amplitude is also changed. Okay, and the phase is also changing. So what do we understand by this amplitude and phase? What is phase of a signal? What is phase? Phase is nothing but the angle at which the waveform is turning. Okay, so the angular velocity, that's what we call. Okay, so you can see that here in this part, okay, in this section, you can see that the waveform is slightly tilted. Okay, slightly tilted. So there's a phase difference here, and in this one you can see the waveform is the waveform okay, is only from here to here. But then here you see the waveform is from here to here, right? So which means there is a change in both amplitude as well as phase. Okay, so there is an angular change and also there is a difference in the height of the signal. So students, are you able to follow? Yes, are you getting something?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Fine. So the next one that we'll be looking into is the phase. Okay, the phase modulation. So in short, sometimes this phase modulation is also called as PM, phase modulation. Phase modulation can also be used to convey multiple bits of information with each change of phase while the amplitude and frequency of the signal remains constant, right? So only the phase is getting changed, okay? But then the amplitude and frequency. See, these are the three main important components of signal, okay? So what are they? Amplitude, phase, and frequency, okay? Amplitude, phase, and frequency. So these are the important things, or we can say the important properties of a waveform. Now here you can see the frequency of the signal, which means the way in which these signals are packed, okay, or probably you can say the distance between each single wave is same, which means the frequency is remaining the same. If the frequency is high, then you can see that these waveforms will be very close to each other, okay? So that's when we say the frequency is high, and then when they are far apart, we can see that we can say that the frequency is low. And now we know about the amplitudes, right? When we talk about the amplitude, you can see that all are actually moving on or having the same height, right? You can see starting and at the bottom, all are having the same height, right? So which means the amplitude remains the same. So the only thing that changes here is the phase. Phase, as I told you, the angular change that happens, right? Now, if you can observe here, the wave has started from here. Okay, it goes on top, comes down, goes on top, comes down, goes on top, stops here, and then it comes down. So there's a change in the phase. Then it goes on top, comes down, and then it stops here. It doesn't go down further, but then it again rises on top. So whenever there is a change in value, okay, you can see that these types of changes can be observed. So whenever there is a change in value, say for example, if the values are changing from 0 to 1 or 1 to 0, so immediately you can see that these changes are incorporated. So when I say that these changes are there, it means that there is a change of data. Okay, so at this section there is a change of data, at this section there is a change of data. Just assume a stream of data that is passing through, okay, 0 0 0 and then probably 1 1 1. So the point at which you find that there's a value change, okay, so at that point is where it is just write a stream of data. Say I have 0 0 1 1 and then 0. Now you should observe that at this point of time here, you can see that from 0 to 1 there is a change, and here from 1 to 0 there is a change, right? From 0 to 0 there is no change, okay? From 1 to 1 also there is no change, but 1 to 0 there is change, and 0 to 1 there is a change. So whenever there is a change of data or bit streams here, okay, you can observe, this kind of changes. So I hope you have understood as to how this phase modulation works. Yes. No responses?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. The next one, there's actually something called trellis coding. Okay. Of course, these days, it's not used much, but then it's not of that importance. Anyway, I can probably skip it. This was a technology used to, in modems, okay, to increase the performance of the modem. Okay, so anyway, we will just have a short look at it. The breakthrough in modem performance in 84, okay, in about 1984, coincided with the adoption of error control code as part of modem specifications. So these days, when you see any electronic device at the bottom, you can see that so many checks or so many standards, or any electronic device that you buy, you can see that it's been checked and okayed. Okay, you can see the logos of many companies or many associations, many quality check parameters that has been done on your electronic device, right? So this trellis coding was also one of that sort, okay, where uh, every modem that was sold, okay, was supposed to have this kind of coding. Okay, so basically the error control code is not separated from the modulation process, but then this trellis coding was done very intelligently, where the error control and transmission and modulation all happens in the same device. Okay, so that was the type of complexity that was developed in the year 84. So this was removing the artificial separation between modulation channel and coding scheme designs. In this technique, okay, it goes under the name of trellis coded modulation, and it originated from insightful combination of three fundamental ideas: set partitioning, trellis encoding, and soft VTB decoding. So these three are the steps that happens in trellis coding. Okay, so first the partitioning of signals, and then the trellis encoding, and then the soft VTB. So you should understand that this is used for error control. Okay, for error control, trellis coding in modems were used for error control. Okay, so it was mostly used in PSTN circuits. Okay, public switch telephone networks. So you'll be learning this in your upcoming semesters. Okay. Next, I have put up a difference between a DSL, okay, digital subscriber line, and PSTN, okay, which is the differences and how they actually function. Have you heard of these terms, PSTN, DSL, LAN, dial-up connection? Any of these terms?
LAN.
LAN is,
Yes, sir.
yeah, LAN, I think these days very common. How about dial-up connection? Have you heard of
Yes,
anything?
sir.
Previously, initial days when we all used to use internet, okay, it used to be through a telephone line, okay. and you had to dial, on the computer. Okay, there is to be an option where you have to dial. So when you are connected on the internet, okay, on your computer, your telephone line goes dead. Goes dead in sense like if in case you call that number, you would get engage sound. Okay, engage beep. So the line was, just it can be used for either voice or data. Okay, so it was not capable of running both on the same line. So those were the days, where this dial-up connections, existed, and the maximum speed that we could get is probably around 56 kbps. That was a maximum. So a landline and then a desktop computer. Okay, so that was the maximum. Probably you could do some Google search and just read some articles, but then high bandwidth demanding sites like YouTube or some animations, and so those things wouldn't be possible at all. Okay, just for some referring documents or something like that, text based used to be possible, but then even that used to take time. And the most important thing that we all used to do is probably check emails, right, with those connections. But these days, the technology has moved on so fast, that you can practically experience about 1 Gbps. Okay, with the 5G networks coming up, you can experience close to 1 Gbps, which means a high definition movie, okay, probably of 4 to 6 GB should be downloading in about 5 to 6 seconds, right, practically speaking. So that's the level of differences that's happening these days. That's the level of innovations that is happening, and the changes that have happened in the field of telecommunications. Okay, so we will now look into the differences between DSL and PSTN. Okay, so DSL, as I told you, it's digital subscriber line. Okay, so DSL provides always on high speed internet. Now, what is this always on? You don't have to connect, you don't have to dial to connect to the internet. Okay, there is no process. Okay, you don't have to initiate any process to be connected to the internet. It is just like these days how you are connected to your internet. Do you when you have to connect to your modem, do you have to do some settings and then connect it to your modem? No, once it's connected, it's done, right? So you don't have to initiate the connection the next time, right? That's what I'm trying to convey here. So internet access over a single dedicated telephone line, okay, and cable modems are the primary competitor to DSL. So these cable modems, even they used to have modems where the cable wire gets connected, and from the modem it gets distributed to your computers or laptops or whatever. Primary competitor to DSL and offer always on high-speed internet across access over a shared cable television line. Okay, so this cable television line, so they were transmitting data in this cable lines. Okay, so cable offers a significant speed increase in the internet performance when compared to dial-up connection, right? So as I mentioned, dial-up connections were not that fast, but then with cable connections, we were able to experience high-speed internet. Okay, so that's where the term, once the speed increased, the bandwidth increased, that's where the term came, broadband. Okay, so what's a band? A band is nothing but the differences between the frequencies, right? The highest and the lowest bandwidth. So when I say broadband, which means it can accommodate more number of frequencies, the operating range is increased, right? So which means more data can pass through. Cable networks differ from DSL networks in their basic structure. Okay, cable modem service is set up like a local area network. So cable modem was as good as the LAN that we see these days. Okay, so it was making it possible for many users to share the same bandwidth. So it's just like, you have one connection, and all of you in the house will be using it. Okay, you don't have to subscribe again another connection, okay, just for connecting another new device. So each modem is capable of connecting these days about 10 devices, right? Fine. Cable modem upstream, okay, from home to the internet, which is called the uplink. Okay, so previously it used to be called upstream and downstream. So these days it's called downlink and uplink. This traffic will in many cases be slower than DSL. Okay, so the only disadvantage here is that the upload speeds are slower in cable modems, but then the download speeds are higher. But DSL will offer both upload and download at the same speed. So you have something called synchronous connection and asynchronous connection. Okay, so synchronous means both your download and upload will be same speed. And then these internet service providers, they were thinking, why should we provide the upload speeds as good as download speeds? Let us reduce that so that we can save on costs. Okay, so that was their plan. And what they did was they provided higher download speeds and reduced the upload speed. Okay, so which is still continuing to this very minute. Okay, so you can see that the download speeds are higher and the upload speeds are lower. So that's because there is less number of uploads that happens, and basically we are consuming. Okay, we are not content creators as such. So the percentage, if you take, okay, consumers are more than content creators, right? So that was the basic idea. But these days, trends are changing a little, wherein you can actually have higher upload speeds as well. So this will enable in your uploading of videos faster. Okay, I hope you understood the difference between synchronous and asynchronous, right? Fine. So particular cable modem is inherently slower, or because too many people in the neighborhood are trying to send and receive data at the same time. Okay, so cable, it becomes slower if there are more number of subscribers. Okay, so as the number of users increases, the bandwidth allocation for each user becomes less. It is just like a Wi-Fi connection, right? So if there are more number of users, the bandwidth gets shared between all the number of, say, if there are 10 users, okay, and you have a plan of 100 Mbps, okay, so 100 divided by 10, okay, so about 10 for each, right? So if there is only one single user, then all that bandwidth can be utilized by the single user. So that's the basic concept as to how this sharing of bandwidth happens. Are you clear with this point, the bandwidth share which I'm talking about? Yes, Mamta? Krishnan, is that concept clear? Okay, thank you. So unlike a DSL, a cable modem provides a bridge between a customer's LAN and coaxial cable. Have you seen this coaxial cable? Do you know what a coaxial cable looks like? Previously, these cable TVs, cable connections used to have this black wire, okay, and in between there is to be a metal, okay, in between the wire, okay. So those are actually coaxial, where you have a silver foil. There's a black plastic covering, okay, fiber covering, and then underneath you have a silver foil kind of thing, and then below that you have another white plastic covering, okay, fiber, and then inside that, okay, you have a small rod kind of thing. Okay, so these are nothing but your cable, coaxial cables. Have you seen them, students? Coaxial cables? Yes, no?
No, sir.
Okay, fine. So just you can probably have a search on it. Probably I will look it up for you, okay, and then I will show you the diagrams, okay, as to how these looks. Fine. Now there's a concept called parity. Okay, so odd parity and even parity. So the reason why we use these odd and even parity is because, okay, we will get to know how many number of ones are there, okay, how many number of zeros are there. So based on the number of ones and zeros, we try to calculate if our information, whatever information that I have sent, is the same as what I've received. Okay, so let us say I have sent an information, okay, and this information has 5 ones and 5 zeros. So I am actually in this process, I'm not checking as to in what order they are, but I'm just trying to check, I'm trying to count how many number of ones and how many number of zeros. Okay, so with this I'm sure that whatever data that was sent is as good as authentic as what I have received. Okay, so this is nothing but called parity, odd parity and even parity. So based on the number, so if there are odd, if there's an odd number, okay, 1 3 5 7, it's called odd parity. If there are even numbers, then it's called even parity. Okay, so we will just quickly look into this concept. A parity bit or check bit, okay, so that's why it's also called as check bit, is a bit added to a string of binary code to ensure that total number of bits, okay, total number of 1 bits in the string is even or odd. So we are concentrating on the number of ones. Parity bits are used as the simplest form of error detection. See, this is not a fail proof, okay, which means it's not going to solve the problem of errors, okay, but then it is going to help us in detecting if there are any errors. So if there's a mismatch with the number of ones and the number of zeros, then of course I will get to know that the data is not the same. Okay, it's a different data that has been sent and the different data that I've received. So that's why these days, communication systems, they do have something called acknowledgement. Okay, so data are sent in the form of packets and you have something called acknowledgements. So if and only if the packet sent is received by the receiver, okay, then the receiver will send an acknowledgement stating that here you go, this is my acknowledgement I have received and you can send me the next packet. I am ready for reception. Okay, so these are the kind of techniques that were employed to make sure that communication process is much better and having higher performance with less errors. Okay. Okay. Okay, so just let me show you how this coaxial cable looks. See, this is what I was talking to you about, where it has a plastic jacket and then a metallic shield, a dielectric insulator. Okay, basically that's an aluminum foil, okay, that you can see, and the center conductor. Okay, and then again you have a dielectric material and then central. So this is how the coaxial cables were looking like. Have you seen these type, wherein previously we used to connect to our cable televisions? Even these days, you can probably look into the setup box. Okay, so behind you will have this coaxial cable, the one which comes from the outer unit, okay, the dish, from there to the setup box behind. You can still find these kind of cables. Have you seen them?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So these are the cables that I was talking to you about. Okay, fine. So I hope you have understood a basic concept of how this parity is into, right? And yeah, so basically we are counting the number of ones. So there are two variants of parity bits, which is odd parity and even parity. So if there are odd number of ones or even number of ones. In the case of even parity, for a given set of bits, the occurrences of bits whose value is 1 is counted. If the count is odd, then the parity bit value is set to 1. Okay. So if there are odd number of ones, let's say there are 3. Okay. And if in case I'm checking for even parity, then there is something called a parity bit. Okay, a parity bit, and that goes high. So 3 plus 1 becomes 4. So that gives you an even parity, right? So what is happening here? The total count of occurrences of ones, okay, including the parity bit. Now this is important. Okay, so not only here, okay, not only here, but then the parity bit going high. Okay, so let's take this example. So this is only my data. Okay, my data has only one single high bit. Okay, so which means it is odd number. So this will go high and then it becomes an even parity. Now here let us see how many ones are there. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 6 number of ones. Okay, and the parity bit goes 0. So which means it is already even. So if it is not even, then it will go high. Okay, so let's check this example. 1, 2, 3. So it is odd. So to make it even, the parity bit goes high. So I think you have understood this concept. Yes. The one in the bracket is parity bit. Yes, students, have you all understood this? How this parity works?
Yes.
Yeah, you will be using this parity very much in your next year. Okay, you'll be studying in microcontrollers, microprocessors, embedded lab. Okay, a lot of places you will be actually needing this odd and even parity. Now let's take the example of odd parity. Okay, so basically it's checking for odd number of ones. So it already has just one, so which means the parity bit doesn't go high. Okay, so which means the odd condition is satisfied. Now let us take it here. Okay, how many ones are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ones. So it's actually even. So I make the parity bit high and then it becomes odd. Okay, so this is how your parity bit works. So why are we doing this? To make sure that we have count on the number of ones, so that we are assuming that if my number of ones in the sent data and received data are same, then probably my data is correct. So we are there about 50-60%, but then the remaining, as I told you, the sequence. Now this one can even come here. Okay, and but still I will have the same number of ones, right? So which means we are just partially checking the number of ones and making sure that it is the data is proper. Fine. So I think we'll end our session today and we'll continue with the upcoming concepts. Very interesting concepts with regards to bit rate. Okay, and how the speed is calculated, and space division multiplexing, Okay, so all these concepts we will be discussing in our upcoming classes. Fine.